I know that you wanted to talk about human first marketing and keeping it diverse, because consumers today don't look all neat and tidy, right? We have a different kind of perspective in general to how we interact with the world around us, with each other. I think nothing is boxed as neatly as we'd like it to be, which is amazing. But I wonder if we could talk a little bit about how marketing can actually enhance that diversity that's, very inherent to humanity.
Yeah, I think if we speak to what people love, it's better than what we speak to what we assume people are. Mm-hmm. So the way that we have boxed people makes no sense to a creative person. Like, not many people I know identify with their age or even with where they were born or with their gender or with being like, you may as well say that I identify with being a brunette and an Aquarian. Like, why is that more important than my age? Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Like, I do like that actually, the notion. But we have these weird lines of, this is what it means to be a certain person, and we're going to market to these things specifically. Where literally, you may as well, you should actually market to people based on their star sign versus their age. For an example, why did we choose these certain things? If you go to what people love, it doesn't matter their age or their location. Mm-hmm. So you might be a 3-year-old girl in France and adore pugs, or an 80-year-old man in England who loves pugs, but pugs is going to be what connects you. That's universal. And that's why we see certain stories, books, movies, songs, art pieces that have universal appeal to all ages. Yeah. I remember the first time I heard Elvis Presley sing, I was 8, and I just thought it was like the voice of an angel, and I've been obsessed with Elvis ever since. Me and the rest of the world, you know?
Yeah, his stuff's good.
Yeah, there was something about it that spoke to my heart. So if you lead with love and what people love, that's going to unite them. Yeah. In the same way, what people hate or what they loathe also unites.
For sure.
But that is very much like clickbait and feeding off people's fear, like rage baiting that we see a lot of online. You can do that, but I would say that's not good.
It's going to be short-lived. Whatever that you feed into that negative mindset, I don't think is going to be as good as like a really good-natured story that resonates with everyone's good side. Maybe that's naive, but I feel like that anger, you don't want to feed it really.
It's boring getting angry. I get annoyed like on LinkedIn every single day, but I forget why. Yeah. The things I love, I love them forever. I love them for my whole life, and it just deepens. And then when I find more people who love that thing, it builds a community. So that's what I think we have the opportunity to do online is bring together different communities around things that they love. It's almost like raising up a flag and saying, I'm into this thing. Yeah. And then you can see all around the world the others who are like you, and you're not so alone, and you're united in your love for a specific thing. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the beautiful things about social media. I know there's a lot of negatives, but that's one of the great things, that you can find like-minded people. For example,
you'll find your little group always.
Yeah, you'll find your tribe. I've just realized that I'm super into horror, which I actually didn't know.
We love horror.
Love horror. And it's been there for a while, but I discovered that I was into it. And now I can find all these authors and podcasts and writers online, and I can follow them. And each one leads me down a new trail, and there's more and more. And there's so thrilling. Many layers.
Yeah. So what got you into horror? Just because I also love, I know people are really scared of scary movies, but I love them. Ever since I was a kid, I was, my dad loved them. He would play The Mummy for us, which is really tame now as I grow older. I'm like, that's not the kind of horror I'm into. But what have you been watching? What have you been reading? I'd love to know.
I got into it during the pandemic time. I think because it was such a depressing, isolating time.
You need a little bit of a.
I just needed something to feel something. Nothing was working, and that I found it really cathartic. Yeah. And I just read a book now called Feeding the Monster: Why Horror Has a Hold on Us. And that was super fascinating because in it...
That's nonfiction, I'm guessing, or not?
Yeah, she's like a film critic. So Anna is drawing the parallels between certain emotional responses to horror and where these things come from. And what I've taken away the meaning is that people who have trauma or PTSD or things like that, they find a lot of comfort in horror because it's the externalized expression of those emotions.
Yes, that's so clever.
And so it's super calming when you see this horror and someone overcoming it. You feel in turn like you're overcoming it. So there's a lot of beauty in horror, which I'm really into. So I'd say
I love that you said that because I agree.
Yeah, it's great. But so in our brand, if it had a horror angle, like Liquid Death, for example,
I had never heard of this brand until very recently, and I think they have a big medieval looking knight chopping off heads or something like that. I think that was the advert. Well, I'm not sure.
They've just launched now a coffin for an ice cooler. There's only one that's built. You can get a coffin to keep all your Liquid Death waters in.
That's cool.
It's completely horror. It's but it's brilliant, one of the best brands in the world. So if your brand has something like that it can align with, like a genre, like romance or that...
romance is also back up. I don't know why.
Yeah, romance and fantasy. It's like, find something like that, and suddenly you've tapped into a whole well of people who are going to be supercharged about what you're doing, instead of jumping on a trend like Brat Summer or Demure. You just don't need to do that.
Demure's everywhere in the mindful thing. Well, I don't usually follow things on TikTok that are about film, despite loving film. I like to read reviews online. That's something I do on my spare time. But I watched some of the last 2 scary movies because TikTok marketed them in such a clever way. And it's just user-generated content. People like before and after watching a certain film. And Longlegs was great. I don't know if you've seen it.
Not yet.
So unsettling. And Alien Romulus. So that's stuff that you can get from just seeing people out in the wild doing it. And I thought that horror had a bad rep, but I was really excited to see that being in like a marketing space that used that cleverly is what I'm trying to say. I guess different, right? That's film. With music, I know that like clips are really enjoyable when you've got a really like clever chorus. Sabrina Carpenter's new album came out and everybody's already like on that trend and using it to clip little dance things. And you get hooked, right, on the hook itself, which is fun. But I read recently that doesn't actually translate to listens outside of like a social platform. And I know we kind of wanted to talk about jumping on that trend, and we've kind of been alluding to that throughout this conversation. I wonder if you have any tips on like people being too reactive, what to avoid, where's the challenge in actually implementing things that, and I know you had spoken about like, it might not work for your brand, it might not work for your product, but what are some ways that you could effectively jump into that in a way that feels natural and actually speaks to, your own product or brand?
Sure. It's to be platform specific. So if that hook is working on a specific platform, it doesn't mean it's going to translate into another one.
Yeah.
And what we don't want to be doing with a brand is having that Andy Warhol effect, which is like, well, let's just have the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a billboard, and now it's a post on social media, and now it's a static image on LinkedIn. It's the same.
Yeah.
You want to be able to dress your brand for different experiences, just like a human. So if we arrived today to do this interview wearing our pajamas, it would be weird because we were not having a sleepover, we were doing an interview. Or if I came in a bikini, it would be weird because we're not on the beach. So all these outfits are totally appropriate when you're in the right environment. But what brands tend to do is say, this is our brand, these are our colors, the aesthetic, the look, and now we're just going to slap this on every single platform. And then the assumption is, if this item works, for example, this bikini top works here, it'll work then out in the wild or will work somewhere else. That's like the hook of the song. That little bit worked on that platform because it was correct for that environment. But that doesn't always translate.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said, though, I have heard, personally, when I hear certain songs on TikTok, horrific, dark, horror songs that I like, those ones I will save because it taps into the niche that I'm interested in.
I was going to say.
The subculture, and then I do go and download those songs. So TikTok has led me to a lot of artists I hadn't heard before, but it's not usually the trending songs.
Yeah.
It's the niche songs that leads me in another direction. So there's this trend and then there's subculture. Or special interest. What's your brand's special interest? What can you align with? And what something like Creatrix does is if you're auditing an account, auditing accounts in your vertical or in your industry, you can see what's working best within those accounts, what songs, what topics, what themes, and then take those and adapt those to your brand. Instead of going, in the world, everyone wants Demure, let's jump on Demure when your brand is not Demure. Yeah, or your brand is not Brat.
It's not Brat at all.
We can't all be all things to all people, but you can still adapt what you're doing to fit the platform that it's on.
That's very true. I just got to thinking, how do you feel about video on LinkedIn all of a sudden? Because I know it feels recent to me, and maybe it's been around for weeks, but
I think just every platform's trying to be everything. It's like with all the updates on Instagram the whole time, as it's just a dying platform.
Oh, you think it's dying?
Yeah.
I was just about to ask about platforms too, because I know that TikTok is, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Instagram can be good for organic growth, but maybe TikTok is better depending on the kind of content you want to consume. But we could talk a little bit about that too. But why do you think Instagram's dying?
Yeah, well, I'll say my top 3 platforms that I think for brands are Instagram, TikTok, and Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn.
So I still think those are good 3 to test and to see where your brand works. And they all have different benefits and different reasons of why they work. Instagram has been dying for a while, I think, because the algorithm is so chaotic and has changed so much. And it's stopped being a social platform and it's become more of a sales platform. They've tried to make it like Amazon. So everything is to buy and to click to buy, and it's monetized and it's very influencer heavy.
Yes.
And in general, I think what we're seeing is a return to real. This is also like my hope for the future is my belief in future trends. So we'll see with the data, but I do have data to confirm certain of these ideas. But my long-term view from looking at what's going on with social media is that we are getting rid of this whole facade, super fake, super filtered world, and people are desperate to connect with something that feels real.
Do you think AI has anything to do with that?
I think AI is going to speed up the problem and kill it faster, which is great.
Yeah.
It's going to speed up the churn. So before, we were living in a world where everyone was listening to a guru. Like I grew up in social media time when it was hitting its heyday, and a lot of us millennials, older millennials, were very perfectionist driven. So we believed that there was a right and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah.
And you listened to your elders and people who would tell you, like Gary Vee, my worst. So there he is telling you, you have to do this and you have to do this. And we
These
all
are just
thought,
thought leaders and
thought leaders in marketing. And if you do what they say, you'll also be successful. And then you grow up and you start to realize that the world is a way more complicated place.
Yeah.
And it's not all just work hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and the same opportunities are provided to everyone. A lot of it has to do with where you're born,
For sure.
how wealthy your family was, the opportunities that are afforded to you. It's a rigged system. So these rules don't apply. But what they do is keep the rich getting richer and keep the rest of people spinning their wheels trying to keep up in a world that was never made for them.
Yeah.
So that's like, when that starts to crumble, you have to start to look at what are the true values? What is it that we really want? So social media came up in a time which was telling you that everyone could be rich and successful and have a glamorous house and fly around the world and do these things if they just bought this course, did this thing, did whatever. And then you realize that that's not actually true, and that maybe those aren't even your values. Maybe you're being fed a lifestyle or a success that you don't even want. That's just buying into capitalistic propaganda.
Yeah, and influencer marketing is literally an extension of that belief.
100%.
Which I really don't buy into.
No, because you can see through it. And it's almost like, I remember those 1950s ads of women posing with their little dresses, being like, buy this cookie dough or buy this. And influencers
Always
are just doing that. It's like, oh, this will work, or this will make you happy, or this will, it's like nuts.
It's mostly stuff that doesn't bring value to your life at all. It's just consumption at its worst. So
and that consumption core or under-consumption core, which is a great trend that I love, of people being like, we don't need...
I don't know that one.
Yeah, under-consumption core.
Ooh.
We don't need all the stuff. And that you can live a simpler life. Also because a lot of us are forced to. So we can't have the house and the jet ski and the this and the that. That's just not a reality for people, no matter how hard they work.
Yeah.
So our values are changing, but Instagram is still very much promoting that ideal. Like put a filter on your face, look a certain way, whereas that's slipping away, and we're getting more in touch with reality, like not that Hollywood gloss. Like that's why I think a lot of that digitine was also a trending word of
digitine.
Yeah, like a guillotine slicing off people's heads, but digitine of like canceling out celebrities. Like Hollywood is over.
Yeah,
so that's a big thing on TikTok.
Coming,
yeah, like people don't want to follow these out of touch celebrities promoting their lavish lifestyles that no one has access to. It's becoming repulsive. One of my theories, we'll see if it's true, will be that in the future, people even auditioning for roles in Hollywood, it'll be like, do you have a real face? Like they'll want unfillered faces or unsurgically enhanced looks, because we're craving that like real human vibe, because we've been so inundated with perfection that we've all had to strive for. And we're starting to realize, like, do we even want that?
That's interesting. And I've recently, I get back to the whole film thing, just because I watch so many goddamn movies. You can tell by who they're casting that human, like raw thing is really, it's not a trend. It's just how life is, right? So let's try and emulate that as best we can. And I really like that. But I haven't seen that on Instagram now that you mention it. Like it's all just perfectly positioned to sell you a lifestyle, not necessarily a reality. And I don't like that.
Yeah, and not the human experience. And I think we live in a post-COVID world, and all the things that used to work up until then no longer apply. So we shouldn't be taking advice from anyone who won in that world. That world is over. we're in a whole new frontier now. So it's super important for brands with their creative strategy to be listening to the perspectives of the global majority, not the tiny minority who profited off keeping everyone copying what they did.
They also sound kind of ridiculous. Depending on who you follow, I feel those people who are that sheltered and like live a certain life, they're really out of touch.
Yeah, it doesn't work for the people who are going to be buying your products. They don't want to hear it from them. And what AI has done is it's amplified those voices. So it's being trained on data of the generic. So now you're listening to the most generic answers under the assumption that the way we did things before is the way we should continue to do things. So we set up these ideals like, okay, you need a brand voice, you need a messaging, you need a this, you need a that, these pillars, and then we all stick to them. And then you think best practice is everything that's been done before, instead of listening to your audience and asking them what they value, what they want, and reacting and responding to your audience, which is what social media at its best is. It's dynamic, it's an exchange, it's an audience. So I love the idea that social media gets to be like an improvisation, which if you've done, and we're talking a little bit about this off camera, but about like just how important live performance is, but improvisation, if you haven't done it.
I've never done improvisation. I think it's a really, I admire people who do because I think it's really scary.
Well, I'll give you the one tip. So this is the main thing to know in improv. The idea is that you always respond with a yes and. So you never shut someone down. So if someone's giving you something, you match their energy and give it a yes and it's this. So if they say, you roll with it.
Okay, cool.
Now that's where brands have the best opportunity, is to yes and with their audience. So if you know what your audience wants, you can lean into that and give them more of it. Matching energy is also a current like hashtag trend on TikTok.
So yeah, the vibe, the energy.
Yeah, like are you matching the energy? Like what's the aura? What's the vibe? Like we're so into this vibe thing, but that's exactly what it is. And with video, you can tell someone's vibe way more than you could with a still image. So you're getting way more discerning. You can tell when someone's being fake, when they're trying to sell you something, when they're using a sales script. We've heard it all 1,000 times before. But on TikTok, if it's real, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
And as a brand, you can look at what your audience is saying, what they want, and then speak to them back in that language. And that may mean changing your brand voice or changing your tone or changing even your aesthetic or design, but really cultivating that dynamic by matching your audience and giving them what they want.
Thanks for sticking with us till the end. So, what did you think? If you found this video useful, why not give us a like? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content like this. See you next time.